The number of people killed by Russian missile strikes on Ukrainian cities has increased to 26, including 5 children. A 9-story apartment building in Uman, in central Ukraine, was one of the targets of the Friday dawn attacks. Rescue personnel could be seen removing the bodies of the deceased from the structure. A residence in the central city of Dnipro was also struck by Russian missiles, killing a young mother and a 3-year-old child, according to the mayor, Boris Filatov. The European Commission has reported that 5 EU nations have reached an agreement to permit the transit of Ukrainian food exports after interim prohibitions on the goods were implemented amid farmer protests. The deal with Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, Romania, and Slovakia is timely given restrictions on grain exports from Ukraine via the Black Sea, which force overland exports via the nation's neighbors. According to a leaked internal investigation Amnesty International had commissioned, it was found that the controversial report accusing Ukraine of putting its residents in risk by stationing military personnel in residential areas had serious flaws. The study from last August caused intense resentment in Ukraine, which forced Amnesty to apologize and make a review by outside experts a commitment. Ukraine's forces are concluding their preparations for a long-expected spring counteroffensive against invading Russian troops and are ready, broadly speaking, the country's defense minister has said. Alexei Reznikov told an online briefing on Friday, "As soon as there is God's will, the weather and a decision by commanders, we will do it." He gave no date for the start of the counteroffensive, aimed at repelling Russian forces from the east and south, but said, "Globally speaking, we are to a high percentage ready." Russian President Vladimir Putin has stated that his country must act swiftly and as a cohesive team to fend off economic aggression from the West. He also stated that Moscow would strengthen ties with nations in Eurasia, Africa, and Latin America. A journalist from Ukraine who had previously worked for the BBC was killed while engaged in combat. After Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, Alexander Bondarenko offered to help defend its borders and later joined the military. According to BBC News, the specifics of how he was killed in action are still unknown. Bondarenko, sometimes known as Sasha or Sashko, aired from Kiev for the BBC's Ukrainian service from 2007 to 2011. His co-workers praised the extraordinary news presenter and reporter. Poland has agreed to pay the UK £1.9 billion, $2.4 billion, for an air defence system of British design. As part of the agreement, some 22 Polish air defense batteries would be furnished with common anti-air modular missiles, camps, and launchers. It strengthens already existing defense relations with Poland, where British soldiers have already been stationed since Russia's invasion. The UN's nuclear watchdog said on Friday that Russia notified it that equipment seen at Ukraine's Russian-controlled Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant will be used to repair a power transmission line that goes to Russian-held territory. The upcoming repair of the downed power line may increase Ukrainian concerns that Russia is getting ready to connect Zaporizhzhia, the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, to the electrical system of territory it controls. According to a UN committee, human rights abuses by Russian armed personnel and private military firms in Ukraine, including as enforced disappearances, torture, rape, and arbitrary killings, are of the utmost concern. The UN Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination urged Russian authorities to look into claims of human rights breaches in its report on the country. Vladimir Putin issued a decree that opens the door to Russian citizenship for those who reside in Moscow-controlled regions of Ukraine, but it also raises the possibility of expulsion for those who choose not to accept it or legalize their status. The decree outlines how Ukrainian citizens residing in Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia can begin the process of becoming Russian citizens or legalize their status. In response to a video released on the embassy's social media pages that erroneously depicted Spanish forces engaged in combat in Ukraine, Spain's foreign ministry has summoned the Russian ambassador. According to Spanish media, the now-deleted film featured what the embassy claimed to be Spanish soldiers on the battlefield and a tape of Margarita Robles, Spain's defense minister, claiming that Spanish troops would never engage in combat in Ukraine. The butcher of Mariupol, Russian Colonel General Mikhail Mizantsev, is reportedly no longer the deputy defense minister in charge of logistics and supply, according to reports. According to Alexander Sladkov, a military blogger, and the news outlet RBC, Mizantsev, who oversaw the siege of the destroyed city of Mariupol last year, is no longer in the position he was appointed to in September, according to Reuters. In a parade to commemorate the anniversary of the Soviet victory in the Second World War, which will take place in Moscow on May 9, the Kremlin has announced that Russian military units that have fought in Ukraine will be represented. One of the most significant holidays in Russia is celebrated with a speech from Vladimir Putin and a massive display of military weapons on Red Square.